Welcome to the Thyroidless Life podcast with me, Dr. Rebecca Warren. This podcast is for you if you've been diagnosed with a thyroid disorder, think you might have a thyroid disorder, or are healing after thyroidectomy. I'm doing this podcast because of my own personal health journey of being diagnosed with thyroid cancer, getting my thyroid cut out, getting high-dose radiation, and being left with no answers when my health started to deteriorate quickly. It wasn't until I drew a line in the sand that my health transformed, and now I've dedicated my life to sharing this information so others don't have to go down that same path. My hope is that you never feel alone on your health journey and that you understand how incredible your body is, that it's not working against you, it's working with you, and it wants to be well. Let's do this. Thyroid 101. What you need to understand if you've had your thyroid removed or you've been diagnosed with a thyroid issue. Okay. This is the first step in getting well. I cannot stress this enough. I cannot tell you how many times I've had people submit questions to me and I respond with this information and, well, my labs look fine. Everything's good. I've done complete wellness panel. And I can tell you this, with over 10 years of working with both men and women in the hormone realm, but especially within thyroid and healing after thyroidectomy, a majority of the people I see, a majority are not doing this. I've talked about labs. I've talked about how important it is to get a full wellness panel. I've talked about understanding what optimal is and how optimal can be different for you and can be different for everyone. But I need you to understand why. You've got to understand the why behind this, right? So today I'm going to be walking you through the thyroid hormone, thyroid process. You need to understand why the reason why behind each one of these labs are important, whether your doctor understands them or not, whether your doctor is willing to order them or not, but especially for those of you that are living without a thyroid. So living without a thyroid is very different than living with a diseased thyroid. In the end, when you're living without a thyroid, you go from night to day of having this vital organ that should be there for you, that's changing, that's adapting according to what's going on every day, right? So in like a 24-hour span, you're going from having this vital organ, whether it was dysfunctional or not, to completely losing it and now being dependent on a pill for the rest of your life, this set amount of thyroid hormones forever to take the place of this vital organ. You have got to understand no one is going to care more about your health than you. And also just go ahead and save this episode because, listen, I remember when I first started on this journey when I was a patient, 20, 21 years old, really trying to figure out how I could take back my thyroid hormone health. And I remember every single time right before my doctor's appointment, I would sit in the car. I had emailed myself notes that I had made. And every time I would pull up that email and just read it before I went into my doctor's office because for some reason it just wouldn't stick. Well, not for some reason. It's weird. It's all these new things that you never thought you had to think about. But the best way you're going to get good quality care, especially for those of you that have a thyroid, depending on where you're at, like you don't necessarily have to be within that medical system. But for those of you without a thyroid, you have no choice but to remain within this medical system. And the best way that you can receive quality care is being aware. You don't have to be like perfect and know everything, but you have to be aware of what's going on, what you can ask for. Like you just got to understand your body a little bit more. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Oh, and then before I jump right in, I do have to say this. I have a Thyroid Inner membership. This is currently the only way that you can work with me. The doors are usually closed. This is an incredible group. The purpose of the group is to dive deeper. You have so many more resources. We have multiple sessions where you're learning about something. Then we do a Q&A. We do case studies. You have access to all these courses that you can. So if it's about nutrition, we'll talk about it and you can go watch the course that you have access to. This program I put together because I wanted to create something that I had access to when I was starting to transform my health. The goal is to continue to equip you on all topics. Yes, we always go back to the thyroid hormone, healing after thyroidectomy, but we're talking about nutrition and fasting and dry brushing. It's more of an intimate setting with me to learn about these things. So if you listen to this episode and you're like, okay, I have questions, I want to go deeper on this, I really want to transform my health, Dr. Rebecca, I want your coaching help throughout this journey. Make sure you go to thyroidinnercircle.com or you can go to drrebeccawarren.com. Don't want to miss this. I get asked all the time, but this is the best way for you to dive deeper with me and have access to me and to ask your personal questions, to go over your labs. It's just in a great, amazing community. So, all right, let's go ahead and jump right in. So the first thing to understand is the hypothalamus and the pituitary. Okay, so the hypothalamus is this kind of master control center in the brain. And you've got to understand the hypothalamus and the pituitary and how this comes to play with your thyroid hormones. Because the hypothalamus and pituitary, guess what? It affects your adrenals, leptin, ghrelin, which is your ability to feel full and not overeat, or your ability to feel hungry, your cortisol levels, whether you're stressed out, whether you're healing or recovering well. It affects your release of testosterone and progesterone and estrogen, DHEA. This is really important because what most people don't realize is that something's off there when it comes to the thyroid hormones. More than likely, like it's dysregulated in different areas, especially when it comes to your sex hormones and your adrenal hormones like cortisol. So it's really important to understand that the hypothalamus is in the brain is this master control center where all day, every day, it's looking at its internal and external environment and it's determining if we're safe or not. It's determining, do we need to be into a sympathetic or parasympathetic? Are we rest and digest? Are we in this kind of fight or flight state, which there's some good stressors like working out that can get you in a sympathetic state, increasing that cortisol. But chronic sympathetic state, this chronic cortisol release is a problem, okay? So the hypothalamus is determining, okay, like, are we good? Are we not good? What needs to change within the body so that we are best supported? And through there, you make thyroid-releasing hormone, thyrotrophin-releasing hormone. And the idea is that once that hormone is released from the brain, it goes to the pituitary. And the pituitary is what releases TSH. Okay. And listen, you ask any of my old coaching clients or my wellness coaching clients, current coaching clients, like you ask them, what is TSH? I have drilled it into them that it is a pituitary hormone. It's not a thyroid hormone, right? You've got to understand that this isn't something that's coming from the thyroid. It's a signaling hormone. So if you need more thyroid hormone or less, the idea is that the pituitary is going to go to the thyroid through TSH. The TSH is going to go to the thyroid. Pituitary is going to release thyroid stimulating hormone, and it's going to go to the thyroid and let the thyroid know that we need more hormones. Now, this can be a little wonky because the other hormones, you want it higher up, but TSH, you want it lower down. So it's opposite. This is why. It's like saying, the TSH is going to the thyroid door and saying, hey, release more hormones. If there's something wrong, like you're not on the proper amount of medication after your thyroidectomy, or you have Hashimoto's, like if you're in a hypo state, your pituitary is like, okay, releasing TSH. There's some TSH knocking on the thyroid saying, let's make some thyroid hormones. If you don't respond and you still need more, the body's like, oh, what's going on? Okay, I'm going to release more TSH and more TSH. Like you need to respond to this. When you're not responding appropriately, you need more signaling. You need this more of this TSH hormone. And that's why as it starts to creep up, that's a big red flag. Ooh, we're not responding to something within the body. Like there's something wrong that my body needs more thyroid hormone, Now, healing after thyroidectomy, for a majority of you guys, it's because you need more thyroid meds. But for those of you guys that have a thyroid, it's like, ooh, what's going on? Like there might be a stressor. Did you get exposed to mold? Are you in a really chronically sleepless state? Like, are you not getting enough sleep? Like, why is this TSH starting to rise? And that's one of the best ways to utilize TSH as kind of like a warning system. Now, within medicine, it was considered the gold standard. And for a lot of your doctors and endocrinologists, they're still going to see it as a gold standard. Because to them, it's like, well, if you have enough thyroid hormone, TSH will let us know. There's no point in checking the other hormones because TSH should, if you need more, it's going to go high. And if it's not going high, you are good. There's so much more that goes into it. There's reverse T3, there's cell receptor blunting, there's inflammation, there's how thyroid meds affect TSH. And what I have seen in practice is that in the presence of thyroid meds, it's more easy to see a suppressed TSH even if you're not optimal with thyroid meds. Like even if you're not optimal with your T3 and your T4. So TSH, what am I saying with all of that is that TSH can still look within those medical ranges even though your body needs more, okay? It is a pituitary hormone. It's not going to let you know if your conversion is good. It's not going to let you know if you're binding it up. And they can have this delayed response. You wouldn't believe how many people I've seen, and this is why your symptoms, how you're feeling, what your body is doing is a good marker. Those symptoms aren't to be ignored. They're red flags that something else is going on. Your body's telling you something, right? So if someone comes in to see me, if a woman comes in to see me and she's weight loss resistant, her metabolism is slow, she's got brain fog, feeling depression, anxiety, menstrual cycles or menopause is just wacky for them, and their TSH is like a 3 or 4, but their free T3 is plummeted, I'm not waiting around for that TSH to spike up to 20. And that's so important to understand. TSH is not the gold standard anymore. It is not a thyroid hormone. It is a pituitary hormone. And you have to get full thyroid labs, a full thyroid panel. But TSH is a pituitary hormone. And another thing to take into consideration is that TSH is the medical ranges are far too lax, like just far too broad, right? Like, I mean, I've seen some labs that TSH can go up to a 5. That's crazy. I can let you know that a lot of people that are post-thyroidectomy, and again, remember your biochemistry, everybody's different, but a lot of people after thyroidectomy do just feel really good on it being a bit more suppressed. I've seen people that have their thyroid and feel great under 2.5 or a 2. That's kind of where you want to see it. We see some studies that show, especially with fertility and sex hormones, that's a good range to shoot for. So just be aware that TSH, you want it to be lower. You don't want it to go too high. Now, it is possible if you're feeling anxious and overwhelmed and heart palpitations and that TSH is very, very, very low, that either you're on too much meds or there's a hyperthyroid issue going on. So really important to understand TSH. What is that doing? It's telling the thyroid like, hey, let's release some more hormones. But for a lot of people, it might not show how much hormones, like it might not be signaling high enough for the issues that are happening downstream. Okay. So once you go to the TSH, goes to the thyroid, and within the thyroid, it's this little butterfly-shaped organ kind of at the base of your neck on the front there. Now, your thyroid, this is what's really amazing and it's important for you to understand, is that your thyroid is going to make a majority of T4 and some T3. I think that's really important for you to understand. It's not just making purely T4. The body is so intelligent because T4 takes time. It has a longer half-life of over days, right? T3 has a shorter half-life, hours, right? But T4, it's a process to get it activated and converted, but your body's so intelligent, there's going to be some T3 that it makes that's readily available. Now, I say all that because there are different types of meds out there, and which one works for you. It's going to be up to you. You have to have the freedom, though, and the ability to try different combinations or different ones that might work for you. Let me say that again. You should be able to try different forms, different types to find the best one that works for you. You are an individual, right? To have a doctor that says like, nope, that's it, just Synthroid, it does not help anyone, and it ignores the complete uniqueness of your body, your biochemical, your how your hormones, how your body responds to things. I am a huge proponent of having the ability to switch, and especially if you don't have a thyroid and you're going to be on meds long term. What I have found, there's a YouTube video that's really popular right now where I explain that, what I have found with myself in my own healing after thyroidectomy journey, and a lot of people that have had their thyroid removed or have been on chronic thyroid meds, is that sometimes you get to a point where what worked for you no longer works, whether your body's changed, where you've had a child, whether you're going through menopause, and you have to have the ability to change it, have the freedom to try different things to see what works best for you. So going back to what I said about the thyroid is that, a lot of people do feel better on natural desiccated thyroid hormone, which is like thyroid gland from pig that provides T4 and T3, or people feel good on utilizing T4 and T3 combo therapy, which is understandable because if we're trying to mimic this organ, well, the organ makes T4 and some T3. So that's an interesting thing to know, but the thyroid itself is going to make T4. Now, you make T4 from an amino acid called tyrosine and then iodine, right? Right there you also need selenium. So minerals are really important. Good amino acid, good protein profile is very important to make good, healthy thyroid hormones. Now, once you've made that T4, you need to make sure that you have enough T4 available so that your body can start to convert it, to start to activate it. That's important to understand. T4 has to be activated. T4 is not binding to the cell. T4 is not what's going to make you feel good. T4 is not what the body is utilizing at a cellular level. It's T3. So the reason why this bothers me, again, is because a lot of doctors will only look at total T4, free T4, and TSH and say, okay, you're good to go. But the best way to know if you have good thyroid hormones is to look at its active form, which is T3. Well, Dr. Beck, are you saying that there's a possibility that I'm not activating my T4? Absolutely. And I see it so much. Doesn't happen to everyone, but I see it a lot now, especially as we're seeing a lot more inflammation, a lot more blood sugar and sex hormone issues going unaddressed. We're seeing the body become more dysregulated, exposed to more toxins. We're seeing more and more issues with people being able to activate that T4. So where does a majority of the activation happen? It happens in the liver, some in the kidneys, but the majority is going to be in the gut, liver, gut, very small amounts in the kidneys. But if we're having liver congestion, if we're having blood sugar issues, again, there's so many different things that can affect this activation of that T4 hormone. And the only way you're going to know that is by testing your free T3. You need to test your free T3. And once you have that free T3, that's what's going to bind to the cell and allow all those amazing things to happen, that good, healthy metabolism, just allowing the whole body, the brain, everything to be functioning optimally. So T4 is a majority of what's coming out of the thyroid, and your body's not done there. It has to activate it, but your body's not done there. It has to bind it up. Now, I want to point out this whole binding up process because I don't think cell receptor sensitivity is talked about enough. We know about diabetes. We know that there can be cell receptor blunting. We know that we can have issues getting glucose into the cell. We can have decreased sensitivity. That's becoming very, very common conversation in doctor's offices because blood sugar issues are running rampant now. But you've got to understand the same thing can happen to cell receptor sensitivities to all your hormones, your sex hormones, progesterone, estrogen, your thyroid hormones. And what's kind of a big red flag that I have found, or that you can see yourself, that there's a possibility that the inflammation or blood sugar imbalance, something going on in your body, is causing the cell receptor to be blunted, is I tend to find people being on higher amounts of thyroid meds or higher amounts of thyroid glands, or like if you have a thyroid and your thyroid hormones look like they're at good levels, but you're still having all these symptoms that are related to suboptimal thyroid hormones, even though you're within range, good range, or you're taking a lot of meds, it's because you're not utilizing, absorbing, binding up what you do have available. And that's a really big deal because that affects so many things. And it can be dangerous too. Two different things can happen in a doctor's office if this is happening with you, where those cell receptors are blunted. Either you start increasing your thyroid meds. Now, I've never seen a good thing happen over time with that. I usually see some crazy hyper feelings over time. Lots of anxiety, heart racing, overwhelm, just achiness, all of that. Or your doctor's like, well, no, you don't need more. And then you're left feeling like crap. So you're just very confused as to why you're so symptomatic, but your labs or your thyroid meds are high, right? So that's really important to understand that the T4 has to be activated. Once activated, you have that T3. But once you have that free T3 is when you have to bind it to be utilized at the cellular level. So I want you to understand, I'm going to go into reverse T3 here in a second. Like, I want you to understand how important it is to have a well body to balance out thyroid hormones, to feel good after thyroidectomy, but most importantly, to heal. A body, that's dealing with all of this, like all these thyroid hormone issues or having to find the right dose after thyroidectomy, it's not as simple as just taking Synthroid or Armour Thyroid. You have to understand that the same things that can cause these symptoms and dysregulation, the same issues that may have led your doctor to telling you, hey, let's cut out your thyroid, they're going to affect so many other systems in your body, other tissues in your body. Cutting out the thyroid is never going to heal something. I'm sorry, guys, if you have Hashimoto's or you have hypothyroidism and you go to your doctor and you start, quote unquote, feeling better because you're on the right thyroid meds, you bypassed all this system and you just put in the end product. All these systems are important. If there's a liver situation going on where your liver, is processing a lot of toxins, or there's fatty liver because of blood sugar issues, and you get thyroid hormones and you just don't address that, that's why you weren't converting it. I see that happen a lot. Like, people are like, okay, I need to be on T4, T3 because I'm not converting it. They get on it, they start feeling better, but I'm like, wait a minute. There's still the issue with the fact that you weren't converting it, and that has to be addressed. So it's really important to understand that the thyroid meds can make you feel better if you get on the right amount. Doesn't mean anything's corrected or anything's actually better within the body. And that's why I think it's so crazy. I'm a functional practitioner. I'm a doctor of chiropractic. I wanted to take this path because I believed in treating the body as a whole. I didn't want to use meds. But I always talk to my husband. I'm like, how easy it would be to be an amazing endocrinologist, an amazing doctor nowadays when it comes to thyroid hormones, because all they have to do is listen to you and get you on the right meds, and you could be feeling night and day difference. My job's a little bit harder because I'm over here trying to tell you, listen, job's not done. We got to clean up our nutrition, or we got to detox, or we got to balance out those sex hormones, right? I'm over here like, I'm not giving you this one little pill and get this fast fix. But I'm always so shocked. Again, I tell my husband, like, these doctors can be considered some of the best. Like, women would be going crazy over how amazing their doctors are if they could just get them on the right meds, because you'd feel better, even though it's not, correcting anything. And it just blows my mind that there's so many doctors that just aren't doing it, right? So that's really important to understand is that, you can feel better, but that doesn't mean the problem's corrected. And for those of you guys that are healing after thyroidectomy, I'm going to go back to saying like what caused that dysregulation, dysfunction, thyroid tissue growth, the goiter, the tumor, whatever it is. You don't like the thyroid isn't just encapsulated on its own and it becomes dysfunctional on its own. The body has to be imbalanced, disease. There has to be hypothalamus, pituitary effects. Like your body as a whole is not well. And that's why we see these symptoms showing up in the thyroid tissue. So the process is, yes, start to feel better. I think being on the right amount of hormones, or for those of you guys that have a thyroid, getting on the right nutrients so that addressing, is it a conversion issue? Is it a nutrient issue? Is it a heavy metal issue? Start doing the things so that you can feel better and have enough thyroid hormones so that you can feel good enough to start addressing the deeper issues. And it takes time, right? I'm not saying you have to do all of this in 30 days, but you gotta get that through your head. This is so, so, so important. Now, let's talk about reverse T3. So when free T4, I said it goes into the liver and it's going to make free T3. It actually also makes something called reverse T3. And the interesting thing with reverse T3 is that it's chemically, like at a molecular level, very similar to free T3. But what reverse T3 does is that it can take the place of, it'll take up the cell receptor for free T3. Right? It'll bind to that cell receptor, but it doesn't do the things that free T3 will do. It doesn't do anything. The best way I've described it through the years is that, do you know sometimes how you have a key that can fit the keyhole, but it's actually not the key? Like when you go to turn it, it doesn't turn, it doesn't unlock, it doesn't open, and you're like, oh, this isn't the right key. That's what reverse T3 does. It binds there, it takes that spot, but it doesn't start the cascade of events within the cell that free T3 would. Now, what's the purpose of reverse T3? Reverse T3 is a good marker of stress. It's a marker, I like to explain it as your body is so stinking smart, and we see that the body does this with different hormones. This doesn't just happen with reverse T3. We can see it with cortisol as well, for example. But what your body is doing is it's like, okay, I'm going to go ahead as I'm converting this and activating this T4. I'm going to put some in reserve over here, reverse T3, and I'm going to have it here as backup in case something really, really stressful happens. We get sick, we end up in the hospital, there's surgery, you go into starvation. Like it's saying in case of emergency, like reverse T3 is that open in case of emergency type of thing. And it's so smart because it's a whole process to take T4, turn it to T3 to go to the cell. Well, if you're on it under this high amount of stress, you have this reverse T3 readily available to utilize quickly. So it is a backup system in case of emergencies. But the problem is that when your body is sensing these stressors, remember hypothalamus, pituitary, whether you're chronically, like I've seen women post, like COVID vaccinations, or women that have had chronic COVID viruses. I've had it where, not getting enough sleep, where they have a blood sugar issue, an insulin issue, and they don't realize it. There's all these little things where the body's really struggling. You might not fully know it, but what's happening internally is your body's like, okay, I'm going to increase this reverse T3. I'm going to prepare for some issues that are going to happen. And whether it's inflammation, whether it's a gut infection, whether it's, viral related, whatever, you're going to start to see that reverse T3 start going up and up and up and up. Now, this can be a problem because remember when I said that reverse T3 can take up the place where free T3 should bind and not do things. So if you have lower amounts of free T3, but you're within range, and your reverse T3 is high in comparison, now you have competition. And you could have good-looking TSH, good-looking free T4, decent-looking free T3, but your reverse T3 is so high that it's competing. and it can make you feel those symptoms even though this other stuff looks good. Now, I think I find it very important to look at reverse T3 if you're having symptoms and things are looking off with your, other labs, but especially post-thyroidectomy, if you're utilizing and you're highly dependent on thyroid meds, I think it's really important to look at reverse T3 because, again, that's one of those situations where you could be increasing your thyroid meds when you shouldn't be because you actually have a reverse T3 issue. And when it comes down to it, the best way to handle a reverse T3 issue, you're not going to get a med. I mean, taking free T3 can affect that reverse T3, but the best way to address reverse T3 is to address the trigger, to address the big stressor that's signaling to your body to make more reverse T3. And, I see more and more medical doctors and endocrinologists coming around to it. But listen, you don't need your doctor to just come around to it. You should know this. You should have a doctor where you're like, hey, I would like to see reverse T3 because you understand what it's going to tell you. This is a good marker. It's still an important marker in the process of understanding all of these thyroid hormones. Okay, so this is part 1 of diving deeper into this kind of understanding what these names and titles, what they're saying. And part 2, I'm going to share with you guys what I see when it comes to the thyroid meds, thyroid hormones, and the HPA axis, the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis, what I find with cortisol, and how important it is to know your cortisone levels, how to test appropriately, because what I have found is you cannot get to proper thyroid med dosing and feel well and heal well. You cannot get to a good place with any of your hormones if your HPA axis is dysregulated. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll see you in the next episode. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to leave a 5-star review. I love being able to see and read how this information is helping you on your health journey. And make sure to subscribe to the podcast. That way, when new episodes are live, you can have it automatically downloaded to wherever you listen to your podcast. The number one question I get asked is, how do I work with you? If you are interested in finding out more information about me and being a part of my community, go to my website, drrebeccawarren.com. That's dr.rebeccawarren.com, and you should be able to find the answer to your questions there, as well as checking out my Thyroid Inner Circle membership group, getting access to the free Thyroid Labs ebook that I have available for you, and so much more great information.